There's probably less than 500,000 people on this earth that hold a substantial amount of XRP, a decent amount. Most people think that it is a malevolent design to entrap humanity. And of course, we at times probably grapple with what is the ultimate outcome. But I have a pure feeling that God's will, because ultimately through this whole process, you kind of realize that there's only one conductor of the band. These 500,000 people that truly believe, and as you said, have shortcut it because we've gone through the hard truths most of our lives to figure it out, we're going to be sitting there at the end of this, in my firm belief, with a shit ton of money. I think a lot of other people are going to lose out, and it could be quite destructive what happens in the coming years. But what I don't think the evil side of the spectrum have anticipated is they probably don't fully grasp the 500,000 people and the proportion of them in alignment with good moral values, most likely in line with Christian values, what that would do when all of these people come into a significant amount of wealth.
I realized all this FUD, sure, but it didn't push us out. Yes, it exists, but we're all still here. So maybe it wasn't designed to keep us specifically out. Maybe it was designed to gatekeep this wealth you speak of, right? All this wealth is going to fall into the hands of people that do get it on another level, that will likely do better with this money.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Very excited today. We have a super special guest. NotFinancialAdvice.crypto. Many of you know him for that famous animated George Washington face with the clever emojis in all of his videos. He is a formative, critical thinker in the space. He's attracted so many people to not just XRP, but crypto in general through alternative lines of thought, in particular, riddle decodes, and also very advanced fundamental knowledge that he often does not get credited for. So it's a pleasure to have an FA on today. We're going to go pretty deep into a lot of philosophical lines of thinking and also a lot more about his work, because not everyone gets to see the full gamut of it. So it's a pleasure to have you on today, NFA, and I'm pumped to go deep with you.
Thank you so much, man. Yeah, I'm excited to be here too. This is my first podcast, so.
Yeah, when I found out about that, I was so excited to be able to give you the honorary podcast, and I think it's a fitting time as well. We're at such a kind of inflection point with where the markets are heading, so it's good. It's really good. And I think before we go into the nuts and bolts of everything, because there is a lot of questions I want to go into, I would love, and I'm sure the audience would too, to hear more about your story. You know, what got you into the space, why you started making videos, and ultimately, I guess, what landed you in the space that we've all landed with XRP.
Totally. So it started with Bitcoin. I think it was early 2017. I heard about Bitcoin, and stock markets and investments in general were something I always put off. I think I was probably 25 years old. I was it was something I knew I needed to learn one day, but I'd always put it off. And I just, it seemed too overwhelming. But Bitcoin was this thing where it grew so fast that that was the story. The price rise became more intriguing than, whatever kind of news stories were too much for me to handle then. And so I see it $1,000 and then $2,000. And this is when I started thinking about it as I might put some money into it, $3,000. Then it was 4,000. And it became this okay, enough time wasted. I'm going to learn about crypto. I have to figure this out. It's too in my face. And I had heard about it vaguely through Silk Road. I knew of fraternities, buying, whatever, drugs on Silk Road, marijuana, whatever it was. And so I knew what Bitcoin was, but nobody thought of it like an investment then. It was literally just currency, dark market currency. And so finally, I had a buddy, I think Bitcoin was 10K, and he's you can just buy this on Coinbase. So I downloaded Coinbase. I hardly had any money. I put $500 into Bitcoin. I'm oh my gosh, it went up. I had $600. I'm this is crazy. And I'll never forget, that was right around the time Christmas came. And I think that was probably around the time it was close to 20K. And I was sitting there with my uncle and my cousin, I'm not going to say my name, my uncle and my cousin. And we're buying Litecoin, and we watched Litecoin go from like $100 to $300 in one night. And it was like a drug. I was hooked. I was like, I need, this is how we're going to make money. And I only knew the very general talking points then. Like, that's a conversation for a later day, but the way they package the sort of initial Bitcoin presentation is they teach you that fiat's broken. And you're like, whoa, this is so broken. And then the only option you have in your head is the thing that was presented alongside that, your first initial time learning that money's broken. You also hear about Bitcoin. You're like, boom, okay, that's the solution. So, so I was all excited about that. And then, then you're really in and you're on chat boards and you're reading all the conversations and charts on the HODL app. And I was starting to hear about XRP. And I'm like, man, this thing seems like it's really going to go. This is 21 cents. Like at the time it was 21 cents. Bitstamp was the exchange. And I'm like, I'm just going to, put some Bitcoin on Bitstamp. I'm going to turn it into XRP, and, so I put just a little bit of money. And I never had a lot of money at the time at all. Like I was a post college, like I had a pretty good job, but it was just struggling, and I see XRP go like 20 cents to $3. And I'll never forget that because the narratives in there like woke something up inside of me. It was like, XRP is going to get listed on Coinbase, and that was the big story. Like what happens then? And all these things, like all these market narratives sort of in my infancy of trying to understand the markets, I was so like, not trusting, but like so like aware of them all that they call it paying for your education. I bought it all the way up. And then it crashed on my face. And when it did, it was like, I was like, what do they call it? Like, that was like my villain arc. That was like when I was like, are you kidding? Like who lied to me? Like what is going on here? And I had this background in journalism. I studied math. I have a degree in mass communication. And so like, I knew that the companies were owned by a handful of companies. I knew the networks were, I should say. And I was like, man, so this is the big game. Like they're herding people in and then they're dumping on their face. And it became like my life's work. I was like, I need to get to the bottom of this. So it went from, trying to understand, crypto more so in the beginning to like understanding how these sort of finance media networks worked. And like, that felt to me like the ultimate sort of tell for, to pay attention to in the future. And like, I guess that's basically it. And after that, I started really focusing on, the storytellers of general market media and really figuring out like, not totally knowing, because I don't think, there's too many variables, but I get obsessed, and I was obsessed enough to like really get a good grip on having confidence to buy at lows then, and knowing when they were hyping it up, it was a bad time, and all these different things that was the key for me to really understand things on another level. I think that was the introduction.
Interesting. And in terms of, I mean, that can be intertwined into, I guess, the riddle aspect, and we'll touch on that a bit later. But I thought also would be helpful for the audience with that backdrop, just to kind of give your take on, because you've done some work on this, the origins of cryptography in general, and how you feel this transition that we're currently in is playing out.
I mean, that, like cryptography, what's crazy is that's been going on for a long time. Like people think like, Bitcoin, 2009, like people don't realize Ripple was before Bitcoin in general, first of all. And second, like there's crypto patents back in the 70s. Like, and that's actually a really interesting topic. That gets a little weedy and detaily and mathy. Like that's where you lose people when you start talking about the story arc that led to sort of the acceptance of cryptography. But like,
I think I guess where I'm going with that point is just to maybe rein it in. Obviously, a lot of, because your content, most of it doesn't get seen by the broader public. But what fascinates me about you is the fact that you tie in the idea of cryptography has been around for a long time, and the notion of cryptography is heavily interlaced with riddles in a purest sense as well, right? And you, of course, take great interest in decoding riddles and understanding what the masses miss. So I guess it was more trying to go, well, do you sort of have this philosophical infusing of the traditional cryptography world and where we've gotten to now, where we've got kind of these hidden figures speaking to us in riddles that are also clearly involved in crypto, like whether it's David Schwartz, Bearable Guy, and I guess we will set the stage for BG123, but I would love I guess maybe a philosophical backdrop in that sense from you, because I know that you definitely kind of connect those dots in a very unique way.
Yeah, and I guess there's a little bit of a journey to get to that place, but it started out, like I told you, like I was so angry that someone lied to me, right, on media. But the more I paid attention to it, and it was all, and the more you consider the fact that, human language, like it's encrypted in a lot of ways. Like people, since the dawn of time, like the writers in the very beginning of writing, like since the invention of writing, scribes were taught to hide hidden messages. It's like, people call it double speak, but there are certain ways that, like, it feels like they're speaking on fractals. Like the best public speakers are hitting different, they're very specific and brilliant in the way that they can deliver a message to tons of different, levels of understanding. And that's been going on since the dawn of time, like Jesus spoke in parables and God, spoke in riddles. Like it's a way of veiling information to those who are ready to receive it. And it is funny how much that is like cryptographic messaging, like, sending a message in a scramble that only those with the key can re-scramble or unscramble into meaning. And, that's just one of the things that I do think makes crypto riddles so interesting. And that is, it literally is, riddles are crypto, and the biggest crypto agencies use riddles to hire. Like the FBI, the CIA, the GCHQ, like they're open about it. You could go, like, what's crazy is, all these riddles have Christmas themes to them. Well, the GCHQ puts out a Christmas riddle book every year. Like, what's up with that? Like, so it's very much on the line of, look, it is national security. It's how do we keep information secure, but also readable to those with the key? And I think that same exact structure is actually happening on a mass media level in a way where, like I said in the beginning, I went on this total bell curve. Like in the beginning, you've seen the bell curve design where it's like the really dumb guy's on the left and he's like, the world leaders aren't evil. And then the guy at the very top, the average, is like everyone's like an evil person. And then the guy all the way on the other side of understanding in that like Star Wars cloak is like, the world's not really that evil. It's like this crazy journey you have to go on where you have to go into the dark and you have to realize, like, you have to face them. You have to see, you have to accept that they're lying. But then on your journey, you kind of realize there's clues all along the way, and not like obvious, but you realize like they're speaking in a way that lets those with prerequisite knowledge, that's the key. Like if you have the prerequisite knowledge and you do your due diligence, when something is tricky, when their language is a riddle or cryptographically sealed information. And it's the same thing as like sending a cryptographic message. It's you're sending a message to a massive population of millions of people with different perspectives, and certain people with the key, which is the prerequisite knowledge, can actually understand or at least be nudged toward a greater understanding for a greater truth.
Yeah, and you hammered on this point in your most recent video with Epstein. I mean, you didn't unequivocally say that atrocities hadn't been committed. We want to make that crystal clear. But you used that as kind of this proxy for the idea that maybe there's something much deeper going on here. I thought it was cleverly pieced together in your most recent video. And be sure, guys, to go check him out. And it's very cheap, $10 a month, Patreon. I love it. I love the Me and my partner, we always watch them together. So so that I thought that was a really interesting example. Maybe just before there's going to be so many moments where I want to keep going down a tangent, but I've got to keep it structured. But I would like to touch on that. Maybe just expound on that point a little bit more, how you've kind of come to that conclusion with maybe Epstein being it could be a bit different to how the populace is perceiving it.
Yeah, and again, like you really have to, how when you do this for long enough, when you're like a quote conspiracy theorist, is the only word they give to us that, question narratives and things like that. You really learn how, human nature is. Like the average person, they're actually passive in trying to understand this stuff. And so new information kind of rattles them and they get like, it's cognitive dissonance. Like the more you introduce something that conflicts with their comfortable worldview that they don't care about changing, and all more power to them, whatever, to each his own. But they will respond so negatively that you simply questioned a narrative that, involved, atrocities, children being trafficked, horrible, terrible, people dying, absolutely terrible. But there's this other concept that they don't get, and that is that the world's a stage, and it's inarguable. So like certain stories are real, certain things happen randomly, especially in our lives, which is another thing that prevents sort of, the passive person from accepting, because everything in their life to them happens randomly. But they don't understand that there is this really and necessary like control like over a population that's happening, like through narratives. Like, so that it's new, the world's a stage. And once you realize that news stories are faked, like false flags, for example, like there are news stories that are faked. And when you know that, it becomes impossible to decide, which stories are fake and which are real. Like you can't just decide some stories are real all of a sudden if you can accept the idea that, legacy media lies, like Elon says. You can't just say like, yeah, I know that the news is fake, and then just believe everything about the Epstein story just because it happens to implicate the powerful men that you hate because they make you feel like a victim. And there's this psychology behind it where, again, I can't know. I'm not in the FBI. I don't have the information to definitively know the details of the story, right? But because that just happens to be a story, by the way, that falls into this calculation where when you realize you can't decide which news is fake or real, at least that's promoted to the biggest stories, on every network, in harmony, like they're all in on this pushing of this story, all the networks. Those are the ones that feel the fakest. Instead of asking, what's the news today, you have to ask, why is the news this? Instead of what's the news, it's why is that the news? And why is this the narrative? And then when you do that, that's really what, worked with me in crypto. When I started saying, why are they telling me, that the chain is hacked? Why are they telling me XRP has such low activity? Why are they pushing that so hard with these 25-year-old influencers telling me that XRP has low activity when it's not, like there wasn't even regulatory clarity? Like, of course. Why are they telling me Chris Larson sold XRP with zero context? Why are they telling me he donated to Kamala and they're not telling me that, Alderati donated to Trump? Like, when you start seeing all the lacking context and you understand the strategy behind the introduction of these narratives that are chosen to be promoted that day on those networks, there's editors all the way up. It's a top-down approach. All these networks are owned by 6 companies, probably fewer now. It's, there's an engine. Okay. And that they're not there. They're no longer in movies, by the way, help to distract people from this truth, but there's no more like little journalists running around with a notebook trying to get the scoop. Like maybe that was a thing like in the 50s. I went to journalism school. On day one, they told you, hey guys, journalism for what it was is going away. This was in 2010. They said your starting salary is going to be $15K. There's no jobs. Blogs are going to take over. Like you literally won't get a journalism job. And and for what it's worth, the only people I knew that got good jobs from journalism school were these 3 really beautiful women, and more power to them, right? But they're the anchors, they sit there and they do great and they're lovely, but they're not digging up stories. They're not out here like exposing corruption. That is like a myth. And these stories that get, and certain people are doing this, but they've become what you and I are basically doing. It's new age journalism, right? But so like they discouraged people from getting this knowledge, because I think it's like one of the only ways that really does expose, what's going on. It's the ultimate tell. All of a sudden, when you start asking yourself, like, you know, why is this story in front of me? And if there's a compelling reason that results in a market move, then you can retrospectively analyze the details of it, and you uncover things you otherwise never would have, that no one would have ever shown you.
Another good example of this at the moment, and then we'll dovetail into BG123, is really the stablecoin act that just went through, and even more recently a few months ago now, the war in Iran. And I mean, I don't know where you sit with this all, but I've been pretty open with speculating that right through the Doge era with Elon, it's all been a very big masquerade to roll out the critical architecture in the back end for this new digital system. I mean, if you even get GPT to go run through the stablecoin bill that passed last week, you'll pull out some pretty alarming language that is really just proving that it's all just CBDCs in disguise. Full institutional control. Only institutions can issue stable coins. They've got like a committee that's handpicked to ensure that big tech companies can't come in and do their own stable coins. It's pretty crazy. But of course, as you mentioned, that has not been the story at all. The story's been all sunshine and roses, anti-CBDC Act as well. And we probably already knew, a lot of the XRP community already knew that anyway. But that's also why it's so fascinating that I keep saying this as well. A lot of our community, we are all very like-minded and kind of separate to the majority of the crypto sphere, because most of them are all off chasing meme coins and materialistic items and what's going to get me the next pump. And it's just very flashy, egotistical, 7 deadly sins type behavior. Whereas I feel like this, for me, God brought me back to, God brought me to this ecosystem, but we're all a bit different. So I just wanted to wrap that point up a little bit with my 2 cents, because it's an important point.
I love that. I think you're 100% on. And, what helps you really understand that too fully is when you actually go out there and meet these people in real life. Like, I've been to the Bitcoin conferences. I stood there. There was 30,000 people there. I'd say the average guy there was 25 years old with a string book bag on. You go to these XRP conferences and they're probably 45 to 65-year-old dudes, all walks of life, but you take all these shortcuts, in conversations. There's so much that we're in agreement with that takes a long time to get to. You really have to fight through a lot of comfort to land on some of these truths. And it's everyone that has done that, for some reason they end up here. I heard it in one of your other interviews, XRP is kind of that thing that puts a bow on all these other conspiracy theories, for lack of a better term, but all these different questions you have about the world, they seem to be converging on, this digital system, this digital identity system. And again, part of me thinks that it's a control mechanism to demonize all these things so hard and to nail into our heads that the intent behind them is so bad, because it creates this invisible wall around the participating in them, while they're still lucrative investments, which ironically, all these people that think they're, enslaved, this just further puts them in in slavery.
By missing out as well. I mean,
exactly.
I thought about this today, actually. I don't know where you are, whether you're Christian or not, doesn't really matter. The point I landed on today was there's probably less than 500,000 people on this earth that hold a substantial amount of XRP, a decent amount. Most people think that it is a malevolent design to entrap humanity. And of course, we at times probably grapple with what is the ultimate outcome. But I have a pure feeling, and I haven't said this publicly yet, but I will, that God's will, because ultimately through this whole process, you kind of realize that there's only one conductor of the band, and it's God and Satan. Well, God wins. Satan's kind of involved, but he always loses. These 500,000 people that truly believe, and as you said, have shortcut it. We can all shortcut to the end point because we've gone through the hard truths most of our lives to figure it out. We're going to be sitting there at the end of this, in my firm belief, with a shit ton of money, 500,000 people. And I think a lot of other people are going to lose out, and it could be quite destructive what happens in the coming years. But what I don't think the evil side of the spectrum have anticipated or are thinking about is they probably don't fully grasp the 500,000 people and the proportion of them in alignment with good moral values, most likely in line with Christian values, what that would do when all of these people come into a significant amount of wealth. Because in my mind, it's a double-edged sword. Yep, you can get it into this control bracket for the big institutions and the banks, but you've also liberated 500,000 people that have a fuck ton of money as well, that will be probably more money than any subgroup in human history have ever come across. So to me, there could be something very special, and that's what I truly feel in my bones through God, that is where we're going to. There's some sort of climax coming, and we will be on the right side of history somehow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that so much. I totally agree. I wrote something similar to that in that I had an epiphany one day, and I'm like, wait a second, like, again, I like to fight the FUD. It like pisses me off because I have a journalism background and I know these guys are just sellouts, is at least what I thought, right? Maybe there's a deeper intent, whatever. That's another conversation. But I realized, like, all this FUD, sure, but it didn't push us out. Like, yes, it exists, but we're all still here. So maybe it wasn't designed to keep us specifically out.
Yes.
Maybe it was designed to gatekeep this wealth you speak of, right? 500,000 people. All of a sudden, all this wealth is going to fall into the hands of people that do get it on another level, that do get it, that will likely do better with this money, or at least not, let's not say better, but like do with it what the people who created these agendas would like to see in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean,
who I think God is at the top, like you said. I really do. I mean,
I do too.
And that's the big secret.
Yeah, you've met these guys too. Like, I'm not blind when I go and shake someone's hand and spend at least a few minutes with these. Like, I watched David Schwartz give his time for like an hour out the front of one of the dinners in Singapore recently. And I know we talked a lot about that offline. And I mean, this guy's he's a really generous, warm-hearted, legit guy that wants to help people. And obviously by disclosing certain information, he was more open to disclosing certain information on that trip. And so was Brad Garlinghouse. Like, these dudes they're solid guys. And look, yeah, every corporations are going to have negative forces in them. Maybe there are people in there that are trying to pull it the other way, but yeah, it's just those winks, there's those winks from certain people, particularly Schwartzy, where it's like, you guys are on the right track, don't fuck it up, sort of thing. Yeah, it's really cool. We could go on to this forever, so I got to hit the other topics, but this is a good segue to set the stage for Bearable Guy 123. Your work in particular, probably the best in the world. It really drawing attention to the meanings and then of course trying to tie it across to other hidden meanings in other riddles or pieces of work. I'd like to get your thoughts on, firstly, a little intro for a layman who may not have heard of him, and then who do you think it is, he, she, or group is, and ultimately what it stands for?
Well, first, thank you very much for that. I mean, I really appreciate that. I will say there's, hundreds of people out here decoding, and they're brilliant. I think I'm good at putting videos together, and I'm really good at holding on to, tons of data points in my head and then presenting them sort of in a genuine way. Like I genuinely get excited and mind blown when I find these discoveries and they click in my head. It's like a scientist's like eureka high. Like I just love it. And so like, I don't want to take all the credit. I try to, I'll credit people whenever I share their finds and things like that. But I will say, like, having made these videos and sort of creating this sort of, what do you want to call it? Like this group. So this group of people that are following in the NFA research group. I love it so much because it's created this like hive mind of people that are really interested in exactly what I'm interested in. And they send me their finds, and there's just all these brilliant people sending me amazing things I never would have found. Some things that they come across on a vacation, somewhere I never would have gone, a book that they read, I never would have read. Like, it's so much bigger than myself. And I wouldn't have been able to make these videos. Like, I would never have gotten to this point without all this help. You know what I mean? And that's actually what I would recommend anyone interested in these things is to tweet exactly what you think, share your finds, and all of a sudden you learn things you never could have. And that's, we're all, especially like, people like you and I, we're on these journeys where we're genuinely trying to learn more. And the only way you can learn more is, through cooperation, through collaboration. And I think that, so first with BG123, like what's so interesting to me about it is, the 1, 2, 3. It's 1 leads to 2 leads to 3. And I think that's what he's doing. It's breadcrumbs that lead to discoveries, and that, there's no answers. It's just, here's a picture. And then like the more you try to figure it out and the more opinions you read of other people who, some of these guys are like 65 years old that have all this knowledge. And man, like the journey it has taken me on, like Teddy Roosevelt documentaries. Like I'm watching stuff I never would have seen in my life, and it helps me understand things from such an outsider perspective, from from another angle that isn't in a history book, right? Like, and I think that's actually the purpose of these riddles. Like, there's a lot to be said about them. Maybe they are there for moon dates and things like that. Everybody wants a moon date. That's like that's a flashy title, a flashy headline. I think that they're bigger than that. I think that moon dates could be attached to them, sure. But I think they're kind of like an invitation to these like esoteric truths, like these understandings. And like you could never convey that to someone who looked at it for the first time. But, the more you pay attention to it and the more like you zoom in and you look at the pixels and like I was a graphic designer at one point in the past, and I'm familiar, I use Photoshop and all these things. And man, like these designs are not just like blocky abstract cartoons. They are like very sophisticated in their colors and like there's hidden messages in these things and through stenography. There's like coded messages in the pixelation. Like there's like over 10 million pixels in one of these pictures or even more. I mean, it gets so, it takes a certain eye to see that these are coming from intelligence, like a source that like, if the very least knows more than I do, like, and therefore is intriguing.
And do you have any idea, like, what is your personal belief on the entity? Is it an individual or a group, or you have no idea? It's just pure speculation.
My best guess is that, you brought up Elon earlier, and how, he coincidentally, like he owns like the Tesla company that's building all these massive electric batteries, and a satellite company, SpaceX launching satellites. And it's like Vincent, what's his name? There's this, let me make sure I get this name right. He's like 500,000 followers. What the heck's his name? He put out a really good post about this exact concept. Vincent Crypt 46, about how Elon's basically has all the parts in place for this, future digital revolution, this digital currency revolution. And we'll ignore that he talks about Doge all the time. But so I think like there's people like him that are all in on something, that all know this is coming, right? And I can't, there's just so many nods inside of these riddles that point to Elon, for example, or his brother Kimball, who's also very involved in digital technology. He's got a DAO, like automated greenhouses, another thing that'll go alongside these technologies. David Schwartz, I think, has brilliantly nodded to Bearable Guy 123 in such a way that those that pay attention enough are like, oh yeah, that's definitely what he's talking about. But he creates this perfect veil around it for newcomers that are like, what are you? You're crazy. That's not what he's saying. I think Arthur Brito could be involved, or likely is involved. Funny thing about him, I haven't posted this yet, but he created this video game back in the day. I think it was like in 1980s for Apple. And, the video game came with a hint sheet that had cryptographically sealed hints where like, think about that. That's exactly what these riddles are,
Wow.
And the list goes on. There's just so much of this symbolism too, where I start wondering, I had this video too about the Roosevelt Bears, during the first establishment of the Federal Reserve, which the Federal Reserve wasn't promoted as a banking system back in the day. It was promoted as a new currency system. This was in 1912. This was not like, hey, we're building the new banks, everyone. No, it was like, this is a new currency system. Well, that came along with the two riddling bears, BG, Bearable Guy and BG, and the Roosevelt Bears were Teddy B and Teddy G. So this could be like a age old thing where the elites or something, like whatever you want to call them. I hate the word elite because I don't think they view themselves as these I think that's just another one of those negative connotations that makes people feel like victims to them or something. But whatever, for lack of a better word, these elites, I think that they do tease hints. And you have all these people also, these negative people. There's such a funny way of observing information if you're negative or positive, because you're looking at the same thing, but your takeaway is so influenced by your attitude. And so many of these people that feel forgotten or victimized by, this wealth or this control system, they'll be like, hold on, I think I lost my train of thought. 1 second.
There's so much going on. I want to go back real quick just to one of the really cool ones you did a couple months ago was the expose on the bears that emerged in the cartoons leading into, around the World War I era, post Federal Reserve establishment, and kind of you kind of presented it as a guise to transitioning society into a new system. And then, of course, you drew the links between Teddy Roosevelt to Trump and where we are today, and a lot of crazy links there. And then, of course, we have now this cult figure, BG123, who is also a bear, who seemingly is ushering us into a new system as well. So, I mean, if you could maybe just pinpoint, I've probably missed a fair bit there, but I thought that was one of the most amazing, for me, eureka, going, wow, that is definitely connected in some way.
Yes. Yeah. That was so mind blowing. And I'll tell you what, I remembered what I was going to say. It's, these people think, and it ties right into this. Most people think that they only hint these secrets, especially throughout time. They think that they only hint all these secrets because they have to, for some universal law, they have to predictive program and tell us how they're going to control us. But what if they're literally just handing the torch down through this understanding? Not everyone's going to get it. You can't explain all this to someone who isn't inspired enough to learn all this on their own. So you can literally only leave breadcrumbs to those that see them. If you can't even see the breadcrumb, whatever, it's useless to you. And you're just going to think oh yeah, your attitude's going to prevent you from realizing they're trying to help you. They're not just leaking secrets to follow a universal law that they have to tell you how they're going to enslave you. That's crazy. They are literally giving you, or not you, they're giving those that are prepared the understanding to get it, to be comfortable into this future. And yeah, so I think this has been going on for a long time. And that was my biggest realization. One of I think the best things you can do if you're trying to do what we're doing, research and learn about this stuff, is go back in time. People are so obsessed with, they think the only place they can find information that'll help them is breaking news. This came out today. Don't read something from 2017. I do the opposite. I have newspapers.com, and I will go type in keywords that'll, I'll read stuff from the 1800s. There is amazing things written in these newspapers that are so eerily similar to today. Like an 1800s newspaper was like X of today. It's written differently. It's like there's like hundreds of opinions on one whole entire page. Like people writing about, control and the Illuminati and all kinds of things for hundreds of years. And it really it gives you a different understanding. But so I was searching through there and, keyword searching Teddy Roosevelt and whatever else and bear cartoon, because I became I'll give you and you know this from my group, but it's so crazy to me that, the Federal Reserve went live on November 16th. Okay. I think it was 2013. And they went live on the exact same day, the first ever, not the exact same day, but the exact same. Wait, did I lose you?
No.
Oh, I lost my camera. There we are. I don't have these facts exactly right. Give me 1 second. I think
1913, wasn't it? Yeah, 1913.
Yeah, so on November 16th, the Federal Reserve bank system went live completely, opened all their banks. It was also the same exact day the teddy bear cartoon gave birth to teddy bears. Like the first ever, that was the political cartoon, the Teddy Roosevelt cartoon where he spared the bear's life. It was like a cute bear, and all of a sudden teddy bears were born. And it was like, not only that, it was that same article that he admitted to using doublespeak. So in this political cartoon, you have Teddy Roosevelt saying he drew the line in Mississippi. And he said, yeah, that was a doublespeak article. He was famous for using political cartoons as doublespeak. He was one of like the first to do this, like to really, he had entire magazines devoted to political cartoons of that time where he would encode double meaning. He had the guy that created that cartoon who basically worked for him was named Barry Mann. He was a bear man. So the guy's Clifford T. Berryman made that bear cartoon that gave birth to teddy bears. And it was this November 16th date. And then all of a sudden the Federal Reserve banking system opens on November 16th, and November 16th is David Schwartz's birthday. It just like goes and goes. But I think there's something to this bear theme, and it gets really deep. I haven't done my video on it yet, but there's like this whole other side of, this whole other spiritual side of the bear in general. Like for thousands of years, like before modern civilization, you had these civilizations, like these little tribes all over the place, unrelated to each other, thousands of miles apart. And they all looked up at the sky and they saw the same exact thing in the Ursa Major constellation. They all saw a bear. So I don't know if the skies were clearer then and it literally was like a bear, or like today I don't know how they all independently looked up and saw a bear, but they did. And the bear has become such like a deeper symbol in that regard. And what's interesting too is the Big Dipper is part of Ursa Major, and it revolves around Polaris. So Ursa Major and Polaris have been used in navigation forever. That's where the ship comes back into the scene and everything. And that's why you see ships in all this, symbolism in Trump's office and everything. It's the navigation of civilization. It's like what we always had to do was use the stars. And now you have this bear, and he also has an Ursa Minor. Like there's a Bearable Guy 123, and there's the reverse, the lesser known one, 321 Yogol Bearab, that account. So there's two bears still, and there's Teddy B and Teddy G, and there's Bearable Guy 123 and his reverse 321 Yogol Bearab. So it just feels like there's this like knowledge of that. That's actually what led me to understand this, was that Ursa Major is called the Great Bear constellation. And I mean, the significance of the bear throughout like monetary history too. Like, I don't know if you knew this, but like, I haven't posted this yet either. I'm going to hold on to that one. I got to keep that one I'll post that in a video soon. That's in my next.
You got to save some for the paying customers. No, it's fascinating. And as I said earlier, I urge you all the listeners, go check it out, because no one really does your line of work in long form publicly. It's all just, as you touched on, plenty of very small breadcrumbs found and ascertained by the community, but you stitch it all together. I mean, I kind of do semi-similar with language breadcrumbs pieced together in short form. So it is, if you like my content, it's really just an expanded form of my 1 minute 30 investigation videos into like a 15-minute little mini documentary on stuff that, you know, no one really is tying together. So I do urge you to go check it out. We've kind of touched on one of the questions I'm going to ask them, which is the wildest decode you've done. But I feel like there's that recent 589 thing with Brito, which I know really struck you. Was that the wildest thing that's happened on this journey for you, or has there been something that's topped that that you can recount?
I mean, I don't know, man. Like, it feels like every week is the wildest. Like it just keeps getting, it's all equally as crazy. Like every time my mind's blown, it just feels like, you know, oh my God. I will say, I haven't made a video about, and now that you say it, I haven't made this video yet. The most mind-blowing thing that happened to me, I couldn't put it into words at the time, and it changed like everything. Like I stopped posting for about 6 months after this happened. This happened in December 2023. And it's why my collage is my collage. Like I just, like in a frantic like design spree, just made that design to remember everything. And that design has what I think is the craziest crypto find in the world. It hasn't been posted about. I will figure out one day how to say it. I'm almost waiting for someone else to say it. Like, because I don't think I'm the one that's supposed to say it. It's crazy. Like, so, you know what I mean?
You got to say it.
This in itself makes me understand why the Bearable Guy 123 was like, hey, I'm a Riddler, everyone, because you can't, unless you just say that you're riddling, like nobody even knows what the hell you're trying to do. Like I posted a collage and everyone's like, hey, sweet collage. You know, like no one tries to figure it out. Like that's why these Riddlers are out here saying like, hey, I'm a Riddler, like in all caps, versus, you know, Teddy B and Teddy G, where it was a little, and I don't know, I can't be sure that those guys are Riddlers. Everyone that was involved with that is, you know, long dead. That was 120 years ago or something. So, that's the craziest thing that happened to me. But
what was it? What was the moment?
It's just such a long, that's the thing, is it's kind of the funny part about riddles in general. It's like just saying it straight up doesn't actually do it justice. Like you need to watch, the table needs to be set to be mind blown by the fact. Like,
so you're saying your collage is a representation or riddle in itself of the moment you had where your mind was blown?
yeah, like it's kind of what connected 589 to like Satoshi, like who I think is Satoshi. Like it was crazy. And I gotta like refresh myself too. It's just this crazy, it was too much to make a video about. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I have moments like that as well, where because you mentioned earlier, you know, you probably think quite similarly to me, where we bring in data points across, it could be months. You know, for me, when I started my XRP video journey, it was, you know, 2 years of research and understanding. I had to start to compile into 1 minute snippets and package it all. And I still, to this day, there's some of the biggest ideas I'd need like an hour and a half to even do that. And there's no way I can do it in a minute. So I guess that's probably where you're at. But are you saying we should try and decode your collage?
I mean, eventually I will tell the story, but it gave me so much understanding, and I had to, like, I never found myself just like frantically making a collage of each little piece of the story to remember it. Like, so that was, you know, that really is the most mind blowing. I called the head of the Bitcoin mining council in my state, and he came over like 20 minutes later. We hung out for 5 hours trying to, he's like, dude, like,
I need to show. I'm just going to share it on screen for everyone so they can see it.
But yeah, each little detail in there, you know, tells a little part of the bigger story of my personal, because I think there's a lot of routes to this, and you know, you realize things in different places and different vacations and different from different people you talk to. And yeah, this was my sort of, oh my God moment.
Yeah.
And so yeah, but I'll give you one that's more recent, I guess, that I did make a video about, and it's up there too. And this is just up there. Arthur Brito's tweet made this, because I can't be sure that, you know, he was talking about my video in any capacity. But so I come out with this 589 video, and it was crazy because I discovered that like on May 8, 09, which is the day for 589, basically, all these things happened in the government, all this coordination, like SEC signed file number 98589, which like basically, I'm thinking too fast right now. But the SEC comes out with this file that lays the groundwork for all ETF language of digital assets before anyone was even talking about it, right? Bitcoin source code is posted for the first time on Reddit, a public domain, which the only other time it was posted was on SourceForge or something like that, which nobody even sees. Like that was for like, hardcore coders. So this first unveiling of the Bitcoin concept on Reddit happens the same day the SEC passes file number 589, basically, which is the language still used today in digital asset ETFs. And it was the first time they'd announced that. And the list goes on. Like there was this policy doctrine Obama signed on the same exact day that basically established all the concepts of digital ID and cryptographic God, I hope just don't quote me on that. I don't know exactly what.
Yeah, you're never going to nail them all. That's fine.
I don't know if it was like cryptographic money, but it was like secure wallet transactions and digital identity for the first time in this policy doctrine that happened on the same exact day. And then Trump, like there's other things like Trump signs on September 18th, 2023, or I'm sorry, September 28th, 2018, Trump signs House Resolution Bill 589, which laid the groundwork for the Department of Energy to amplify proof of work mining. Like to scale proof of work mining. This was another 589 file. And the list goes on, like, so to me, 589 was embedded into crypto in general. It wasn't just XRP. And the fact that or into Bitcoin in general, like not just XRP. So that was such a mind opener to me. And I posted that, I forget what day, whatever. It was a day before Arthur.
Was it June, I think? It was like, it would have been mid-June.
So I post this 589 video with all these connections, all David Schwartz's nods to it and everything. And then all of a sudden, Arthur Brito tweets for the first time ever, 5,890 days after May 8, 09, which was the date explicitly described in that video. I was just like, and he tweeted it 3 hours after I posted a snippet on Twitter. Like I was so mind blown. Like I got chills. I was talking to my wife. I'm like, I got to say something about this. Like, I got to tweet something. And I had this tweet written up. She's like, you got to delete all these exclamation marks. Like, you got to. I'm like, all right, thank you. But man, like, and I can't honestly say, like, this is actually an important part of this whole thing, I think, is percentage belief. Like, I think too many people get locked into to being strict to an opinion. Like, I'm going to entertain the possibility that maybe he was doing that to perfectly time with May 809, maybe, and I'm not going to go all in on that theory. So I'm not saying like, yeah, Arthur Brito was nodding to my video, but man, like it sure felt like it for a little bit there, like, God.
That's crazy. And I mean, that's almost like you could easily deduce it. It's an even bigger wink because you're really trying to help a very small amount of people understand what they're gifting us, as you put, then you're doing that. So maybe they're giving you the little wink. Yeah.
And it felt like, it felt so on because David Schwartz was an early Bitcoin developer. Like it felt, and they wanted to, like they built, I think whoever is behind Bearable Guy 123 could very well be some of them could be part of the Satoshi group. I don't think Satoshi's one guy. I think it's like much bigger, much bigger than that. And I think Bearable Guy 123 isn't one guy. It feels like it is much bigger as well. And like,
that answers what I was going to ask you, what you thought of Satoshi or who you thought it was. Yeah. The Hal Finney thing's interesting as well. I mean, he received the first ever Bitcoin and then, he died only, 5 years later or something. Video game developer. Yeah, there's some weird links there, but no, it wouldn't just be him, and then of course Schwartz, like, I personally think it's got ties to Ripple. I think it is. I do prescribe to the narrative that it was the same group that had their fingerprints on Bitcoin definitely had their fingerprints on the early iterations of the XRPL.
Oh yeah, because Bitcoin, I think everyone gets so lost in the Bitcoin concept. They really, the same way that when you learn about fiat for the first time being a problem, you learn about Bitcoin and all of a sudden Bitcoin's your focus. Like that happened to so many people. They don't think deeper than that. Like for 100 years, for decades, people have economists have been trying to come up with a new system of money that was energy backed. And now you have Bitcoin, which is energy backed. And no one wants to use that term. They just want to say proof of work is energy intensive, and they just want to leave you confused. Like the reality is Bitcoin's energy intensive by design. It needs to require energy from the real world to have value because it's injecting value into this new digital dimension, right? From the one we live in, from the 3D. So you have real value. It's like the brilliant part of this whole thing is injecting real value into this new dimension. And the same people who made this have now the interest of developing a platform that not only tokenizes that very energy-backed currency, and there's many energy-backed currencies, Litecoin, Zcash, all these mineable currencies. They're not dinosaurs; they're energy-backed currencies. They then, the Satoshi or whoever was definitely aware of this. They wanted a platform that could send all these tokenized assets that can not only create and like establish tokenized assets on this platform, but that could send all these things in one place. And so why wouldn't they move on to this new system, this Ripple system, the XRP ledger? Ripple's they were before, the Ryan Fugger credit system. I think it was or Fugger, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. It was 2004, I think. And Ripple Communications was all the way back in 1991 or something. And it was for a long time. And, you had all kinds of people working on a new world currency system before that for a really long time. And that gets lost in the mainstream stories. They get completely muted. But Ripple's also one of the only projects Satoshi even mentioned by name. They feel very intertwined.
Absolutely. But, they want to, what do you, I prescribe to your theory on, not theory, I mean, it's fact, the energy-backed currency that Bitcoin is. Personally, I still struggle to get my head around the valuation that it's currently at. I mean, I'm not saying that it goes to zero, and I'm not saying it fizzles away into irrelevancy. That wouldn't quite make sense for me. But what would make sense to me is a more proportionate and fair reflection of the value of the technology once they're operating concurrently in the new system. And where I get lost is I don't think Bitcoin has a fair reflection of its value at the moment. And of course, we know XRP certainly doesn't have a fair reflection of its future value as it currently stands. So you kind of go, well, why is that? And it goes back to the whole herding of the sheep into a narrative. I do get a bit suspect at times with is there going, I think there's going to be a rebalancing. Do you feel that there will be, all the sheep are going to get rebalanced in Bitcoin to a more fair value, and then the chosen ones, so to speak, that are prescribed to the correct technology and have cut through and understood the deeper level of thinking just beyond the whole broken fiat system, as you mentioned, that's where it goes. How do you unpack that?
I'm aligning with what you're saying, or you're sort of where you're wondering about this, because Bitcoin, we've seen the narratives be used all around it, and that's actually the biggest trick, I think. The way that we're supposed to receive Bitcoin is the Bitcoin maxis, they know the most about Bitcoin, but they're a terrible representation for what I believe is Bitcoin's true valuation or true use case. The valuation, I think, is just lost in the market narratives during this transition to full digital. But I think XRP's value, they bounce these things off each other. You see Ethereum crash and then you see XRP pump, and you see, it's a market game. And I think right now we're lost in the translation or the transition from traditional to digital. And it's all the games are being played at their highest level. So who's to say that, I agree with you. Bitcoin does feel lopsided in its value, comparative to all these other things. But I don't think that I think that's an argument, and it's an isolated argument. I think that's true. And I do think it's too herd. But also, I don't think everybody even owns it. You know, like we're under this impression that just because it's what the crypto sphere pushes the hardest, that everyone owns it. But like so few people still really own it or a tangible amount of it. And two, like I think that Bitcoin stole the whole energy back narrative without even saying energy back, like proof of work and stuff, where there's going to be a bunch of competition with all these other smaller proof of work tokens, like that are just as easy to mine and cheaper to send and everything else. So I think that we're just watching the big circus where if you just hold a little bit of all of it, like you're fine. Like, you know, like, and especially this, like, you know, I'm way more into these lower cap, like the XRPs, which isn't even a lower cap anymore, but I'm way more into these altcoins than Bitcoin for that reason, because, you know, they really pumped up Bitcoin. But it reminds me of the David Schwartz quote. He mentioned how it used to be impossible for someone to make $1 million buy of XRP when it was 1 cent. And that really resonated with me because it makes sense. Like, you know, what I think we're watching are all these institutions play this game to sort of inject enough liquidity into these protocols before the cat's out of the bag, and that they, you know, they admit that they're going to use it, such that big buys become possible. Because right now, like $100 million buy in a crypto that's $1 billion market cap isn't even possible. Like you skew the chart, it messes everything up. Like it's not even an intelligent buy. So I think there's this game that we're watching, like an alternative reality game, like an ARG, where the news is telling us this whole circus, this whole house of mirrors, while in the background, it's more boring than that. They're just injecting enough liquidity into these things to be stable enough to then unleash so that real institutional buys can even happen.
Interesting take. And kind of a couple of final questions. We touched on it earlier, but do you believe in your heart of hearts that where this is all heading is for the betterment of humanity or the entrapment of humanity?
I love that question because I think it's one that needs the most conversation about. Like, if all things remained the same as far as technology goes, except crypto, I could see why people were so concerned with this slave narrative. However, there are so many other things happening in the background, like automation, robotics, you know, like the supply chain, like of food, like robots growing food, like I think all of our needs will truly be met to where a universal basic income is airdropped to wallets. And pretty soon, like the only jobs are hobbies and art. And I think art will boom. There'll be art everywhere. Like digital landscapes, like will blow people's minds. Like I think we're entering the greatest time ever to live. And I think it's been like that for a really long time. Like the people in like life just keeps getting better on this grand scale, and less work, like less grunt work, you know, less dangerous jobs done by people. Just like, I know that it's hard to envision that it's, you know, people don't want to leave what's comfortable. They enjoy life as it is right now. But these technologies are inevitable. Like, you know, you're going to see like robots mowing lawns soon and everything like that. And there's just, I think what's going to happen is there's more time to build relationships with people and make art. I think that's what's going to happen. Like and meanwhile, there's these money systems that are literally built to reroute money to where it needs to be, you know, in an actual it's going to make all this possible. Like the ripple effect behind spending, like each dollar, all based on the golden rule. Like this, I think we're going to have more freedom, ironically. Like they're building like a borderless world where you can say whatever you want, be whoever you want. And I know it sounds like whatever, like it sounds like an ad for the New World Order or something, but I'm serious. Like I think if you think enough about it and you don't just have a narrow focus solely on crypto, but instead you start looking at these other industries that are building the fourth industrial revolution, and you ignore all the propaganda about Klaus Schwab eating bugs and all that BS, you know, like if you really look at what's happening versus what, you know, the fear that you're marketed, I think you see a different world happening.
Yeah, I prescribe to that, I think. There might be a wrestle. I think maybe where I'm at the moment is still, to my point earlier, with where the wealth will get transitioned to will be kind of disproportionate because, you know, 99% of the world don't even have exposure to crypto. But ultimately, if the right people are in power, you do kind of end up at that utopia stage. You can. It's not hard. I mean, so yeah, it's an interesting one, but we're definitely on the precipice of the transition. That is for sure. And in closing, what do you think will be in the next BG123 riddle? What's the scene?
Oh man, I have no idea. They're just so like, that's part of the magic. They're so random. Like one minute you have like a dungeon with like, or inside a castle wall, you know, and the next day you're like a cowboy. Like, you know, it's, you know, you're on a ship and you're pirates. Like,
It seems like the one though the last one tied them all together though, which was interesting.
it did.
Those,
I do agree. Yes. It had the greenhouse and everything.
it had it all there.
You know, he hasn't made one. It would be really cool to see him make one like on the moon, like a space one. Maybe that'll come when we actually moon. That would be pretty epic.
That would be very funny. That's gold.
Or if he joined, I was hearing, I think his name's Hey Gary on Twitter. He had this funny comment where like BG joins a space, like a Twitter Spaces, and he just like talks like Santa Claus. He's like, "Hey everybody!" Like that would be so funny if he actually spoke.
Yeah, awesome. Well, NFA, it's been a absolute pleasure chatting and having you on. That was terrific, really insightful. We'll have to do it again sometime. For everyone that doesn't follow him, go follow him. You're going to get a lot more out of it than just this chat. So, yeah, maybe you can send them to the specific places because I've probably butchered the locations, your X and your Patreon, and yeah, just send them to the right spot.
Oh, yeah, man. Hey, I love talking with you, and we'll definitely do this again. There's so many things I think we can expand on too, and I got to ask you some more questions too. You know, geez. But yeah, my Twitter's NFA.crypto. And, you know, that's where my main content is. On Instagram, I'm NFA, period crypto. And then, yeah, my NFA, it's the NFA research group on Patreon. That's where I do deep dives. You know, I've got like at least 50 videos out now. They're usually about 15 to 20 minutes each. And it's kind of where I will just straight up speak my mind. There's a lot of things I don't feel comfortable posting on social media there that, you know, go pretty deep. So I'd love to see you there.
Beautiful.